How are you, my great people, my brothers, my sisters, and great citizens of this great nation called Kenya? I'm back to you again because I have realized that there are so many kind of communications that are going on, that are happening in the media house, in the media briefings, in the social medias, and so on. And we have had a lot of politicians talking and telling us that we need to come together and also dialogue and come to a consensus on what we are supposed to do so that we can know the way forward of our nation. One of the things that I'm so much concerned about when we talk of the dialogue is the mode of this dialogue, the modality that is needed for Kenyans to come together and speak together. But in most cases, we see that when people call for dialogue, mostly are the opposition leaders or they are the leaders in the government, and the people they think they have come to a conclusion of dialogue are the opposers of each team. When the opposers come together, they think that now they have represented all of us in the dialogue or in the agreement, like the NADICL and so many agreements that have ever been done. We have the handshakes and so on. But the community here as citizens, we are ignored. We are not considered for any kind of dialogue. And that is where you see the Gen Zs are not ready for any discussion because no one will be called to the table as a Gen Z communicating to this. Last week, when we had a burial in Moranga that was conducted by His Holiness the Bishop Benson Kamau, normally called Kiengei by people, we saw what happened. The police were not there, but we saw the church when it communicated with this young generation. They were there, they stood firm, they never spoke anything against the government, and they listened. They also listened to the politicians who were there, not because they were from the side of the opposition. No, they listened because Bishop had initiated a kind of a reasoning camp where people could reason and think the reason and see the reason why they have come together, and they could give their efforts. They could also be in a position to pray. They were taken to prayers and prayed deeply for this nation, prayed deeply for the leadership of this nation, prayed deeply for the oppositions in this nation, prayed deeply for the direction of the divine direction concerning the way forward. What does that show us? It shows us that we need to involve even those people on the ground. We need to have clusters of people forming the racing camp, the dialogue, and the platform, and whatever is going into those dialogue and platforms of the normal citizens then should also be considered in giving the direction of the leadership of this nation. And this is what most of the politicians are fearing. Politicians are fearing when people comes to the consensus and speak truthful of their hearts and speak truthful of their mind and give directions on the way forward. And because politicians, most of them take advantage of the citizens to reach to the level that they are in. They ignore the same citizens that made them to be where they are. And that is why you see there is that controversy between the citizens and the leaders, between the youth and the leadership of this nation. The leadership should come down and listen. Listening is one of the most perfect gifts that one can have. When you listen, you'll be able to learn, and you'll be able now to know the kind of step that you are going to take, because you've listened, you have known what is the heart of the person, what is the mind of the person, and now you can be able now to form a content on the way forward and know the direction that you are going to take. But if you don't listen to what you are saying, then you'll go your own way and people will go their own way. And when people now go their own way and you also go your own way without a consensus, then there is always a conflict. How do you solve this conflict? You don't necessarily need a mediator. No, you can solve it by listening and acting accordingly to what the other people want. My take or my advice is this: let us form what we call a reasoning camps. Let us form those cluster groups we are people would reason together. We are people who now dialogue, and we are people who now make their points conclusively aggregated in what we call the recapture platform. And when we do that, then everybody will seem to be considered in any dialogue that is going to take place within the leadership concept. But this game of politicians coming together and assuming that they have done a dialogue because of the handshake and other issues, it is not the right thing to solve the problem. Because if it solves the problem, then we could not be having these problems we are having today. Because how many handshakes have been there in Kenya? Because how many consensus, political consensus have been made in Kenya, which still never treat the problems which are there. And now we need to come up openly and spend a lot of time in dialogue, reasoning, and recapture system so that all problems can be solved once and for all. Thank you so much. Yours, Reverend Joseph Mary. God bless you.